No, actually, I wasn't sure if Missy wanted to go yet, or if how you wanted to tackle this, Missy, if you had questions or what your thought process was. Yeah, I can't hear you either. I don't know what's we don't usually have audio issues. Usually we
I
have connection.
silenced myself too.
Okay, okay, that's
But
why.
I'm sorry, I didn't think you were talking to me. I apologize. I
Oh,
was
that's okay.
gonna put it on when I was talking. Um, Kat, I think it's perfect for you to go ahead. I mean, you have some thoughts, and let's just roll with those thoughts. Because I
Okay.
have some
Um,
I have some questions, and you know, I'll get to them. It's no problem.
okay. And we can tag team this. This is and Glenn, I want to first of all thank you honestly for being a part of this. I think this is I've been so excited about this all week. I think that for us to be able to help people in this way, this is something that I do all the time anyway, but to use this platform I think is fantastic. And I really appreciate you putting yourself out there in this way and allowing us to help you with this. So
Thank
I'm
you.
I'm excited, and I think you'll see Missy and I each have sort of different approaches, but I feel like they're complementary. And that's one of the things I love is to listen to how what Misty has to say because I'm like, oh, that's a great idea all the time. So anyway, so I want to first of all commend you for jumping into the consulting role. I think that's really smart. And it's funny, we were all cracking up. I don't know if you saw when you mentioned how it is like dating, and we've talked about that before. How interviewing is like dating, and I hadn't thought of it in terms of how there are all always these jobs when you don't need them or don't want them, and then when you're ready, you think you're ready, they're not there. That's true too. So that was a different dating analogy that I was always thinking about how the interview is kind of like going on the first date and all of that. And
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
it's
There's certain things you don't talk about until it's appropriate.
right.
The more I've thought about it, and I've really considered writing a article on it. The only thing I think you can do that you can't do, uh, the most salient difference that I found is that you can not really call a recruiter too much, but you can definitely call a woman too much, as
Yeah.
I know from my own personal experience.
Yes, yes, you can do that. And you can, yeah, if it's a recruiter, the third party, you can. And that's where, too, Glenn, I'm excited about this because I can help you from the standpoint of working with a recruiter and working with a hiring manager directly. So
Hmm.
I've been both. And the recruiter, right, you can't call the recruiter too much. They're happy with that engagement. But the hiring manager or an HR manager doesn't want you to stalk. And I that's one of the things when I'm coaching people, I talk to them about sort of the happy medium and how often you can call before you realize it's just a no-go and it's kind of time to move on. But so you're consulting. I was happy to hear about that. You mentioned that you've applied to about 75 positions, and
At
that
least.
okay, and that you so what do you think your and I know that you're not that you feel like your resume is strong and your LinkedIn profile, so you're actually getting your foot in the door. How many interviews do you think you've had?
Well, I went through I actually forgot I had done this back in April of this past year. Um, and I calculated, I pulled up, I actually was tracking all of this.
Good.
And I applied 70 different positions as of April of 2014. So almost a year from the date that I started. Uh, and I would say phone screens, probably half of them.
Wow.
And in-person interviews, I've been on at least 25 in-person interviews, separate companies. And um, the one thing that I didn't mention that really has me questioning some things is that, with few exceptions, all of the interviews that I've gotten and all of the phone calls I've gotten have either been through people finding me on LinkedIn
Okay.
or from the old-fashioned filling out an application online. I have gotten 2 interviews with people in a network. And when I started this process in, say, March of 2014, I had about 300 contacts in my LinkedIn, and now I'm well over 1,200 or well over 1,800. So I've grown that network. I've participated in a lot of LinkedIn or a lot of networking events here. I negotiated as part of my severance package the services of Right Management or as a outplacement, and I've been going to them pretty regularly since August of 2014, and I feel like I'm doing everything, but it still looks awkward. They say you could put lipstick on a pig and it's still a pig. Some suits, as I've described it, sometimes some people just don't look good in certain types of suits, and it doesn't matter how expensive or how you tailor that suit. Some people just don't look good in double-breasted suits, for example. And here I am doing all the things that people are suggesting, and I haven't had a whole lot of luck with that. But that said, I've had no problem, and I don't have a problem considering everything. I've gone back to the basics. I've redone my resume. I've taken my resume to a different approach where it's more of a diagram. Are you looking for ways to save money? Yes. Call Glenn Lerner. No. Do you have problems with retention? Yes. Call Glenn Lerner. No. And just going in a very out of the box creative way. I've done things that, okay, excuse me. I've gone out of my way to be considered, or to say, look, whatever I'm doing is not working. And I've gotten every excuse possible for in terms of feedback. You make too much money, you'd be bored in the role. You don't have the experience. You're based on what you're telling us, your salary was much lower than what we're looking to pay. So you probably weren't actually doing what you weren't the decision maker. I've had, which that one I was kind of a backhanded compliment, I guess.
Right.
He's like, oh, you were underpaid for, an exorbitant amount, and therefore we don't want to hire you. But I've taken to wondering, if there are people in this market, South Florida, who are probably not giving me good recommendations. But I've expanded my network so much and made some pretty close contacts with some people that I would think somebody along the way, somebody would come in and say, I heard this about you, or tell me about what happened at so and so, because I find it hard to imagine that let's just say it was 25 interviews, and I'm face to face final round interviews, and I'm erring on the conservative side. I find it next to impossible to imagine that I was the second best candidate in every single one of those opportunities. And even more so, being the second best candidate, I know that my wife was the second best candidate for a job that she now holds, because the first candidate turned it down, and they're very happy that they made that selection. They probably would have, you can't say, but they definitely got a good hire with her. And so, okay, so I'm the second best. The probability that I'm the second best candidate in every interview, as remote as that is, then add on the probability that in 10% of those, 2 or 3 of those, they've offered the job to somebody who's turned it down and gone to their second candidate, means that uh, there's just, it doesn't make logical sense. One second. Mhm. Sure. Yes. Okay. Thank you. I apologize about that. I don't have a dog. I have a child,
That's
a 10-year.
I was gonna say I've got a 10-year-old boy, and it sounded. Is it boy or girl?
It's a boy.
Okay,
He's a boy.
okay.
Yes,
It's a
yes.
boy. Sorry.
Yes,
Yay!
he's a boy. I have one of each. I have one of
Okay.
each. So,
And
shop is closed and I'm happy.
did you say you're in South Florida?
I am.
Do you ever get on Periscope and listen to anyone on Periscope by chance?
I do not. I do
Well,
not.
at some point, look up Caleb Maddox. He's a 13-year-old little like phenom. He's amazing. But your son actually sounds like him, and I think they're in Miami. I think Matt Maddox and Caleb Maddox are in Miami. But my son's 10, and he gets a kick out of Caleb Maddox too. But tell your son he sounds like him, and that'll be a huge compliment.
He's very we never talk to our kids like they were we talk to them like they were young adults or young people. And I certainly, he's my oldest. I was listening to NPR while he was an infant because he didn't know, Dad, change the channel.
Right.
So he's got a very good vocabulary and has a penchant for sports like I've never seen anybody. I was telling Stephen that David my son's name is David, will probably take over for Bob Costas when
Cool.
Bob Costas is ready to retire, because I buy him one football book. We show up at a football stadium, and he's going around a college football stadium, and he's pointing out all the people in the ring of champions, and he said that person plays for that team, and just rattling off stats like nobody's business, and
Wow.
it's impressive.
That's
impressive.
Cool. That's super cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump back, but definitely have him look up Caleb because I think he'll enjoy him. But I want to jump back to a couple of things that you said. One was, first of all, I want to definitely eliminate the fact that you have any type of resume or profile issue. For you to have like a 50% success rate is amazing. Most people have maybe a 10% success rate. So you're getting your foot in the door. You are probably applying for the right positions. Do you feel like you're applying up or down, or you're applying for the right types of positions?
I feel I'm applying for the right types of positions. I have considered lower level positions just because that was what was out there.
Right.
And I definitely applying for positions that I'm well qualified for.
Okay.
I think one initial problem that I had was my job title at my last role wasn't really indicative of what I actually did. I was managing $200 million in incentive-based compensation for a global 100 company, and advising the boards of directors, et cetera. And I had an analyst title, and people were having a hard time fathoming the idea how I was doing that all by myself, and not reporting into a director or a manager. So I was fortunate to go back to my employer and ask them, would you mind, since you replaced me with 3 people, one of whom's title is now a manager, would you mind if I take his title? And after I pointed that out, they said, yeah, I guess that's fine. But I have so many.
That's really smart.
Yeah.
I actually had never thought of doing that, so that's a really good idea because it does. People will look at resumes, they give it like 10 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds, and they're going to look at that title. And usually, what I recommend is either being even more generic with the title, but I never thought about actually calling the previous employer. I do want to put your mind at ease as well on sort of feeling like there may be an issue with somebody. It sounds to me, this is what I was hearing, somebody blackballing you. It sounds like that you're worried that maybe, and here's the thing, I will tell you, I have skeletons in my closet. I have issues where with previous employers where if they called them, they probably wouldn't get a good recommendation. But being someone who's in HR, I can tell you that that is almost never the issue. And I've had clients who have had that fear as well. And what I did was actually called because this is what I've done. I'm considering hiring Jane Smith for XYZ position. I just wanted to get, I wanted to call for a reference. She listed you as a reference, blah, 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 blah. And I've done that a couple of times, and they've never given me any negative feedback. In all of the years of references, I've only ever had one bad feedback, one bad reference. And I actually knew the person and hired her anyway because I knew her and I knew she was a good employee. And there was apparently some type of, bad mojo between the two of them. But unless there's something where it's an industry, and I know that every industry, forgive the term, but every industry is, I'll just say tight knit. I won't use the other term, but every industry is very tight knit. And I know that kind of people know each other, but it's really rare that that happens. What is more common is that you go into an interview with a fear that that may happen. And what happens is they will say to you, and one of the questions I would ask people is, and I hated references. I hated to do them because it was a waste of my time, because people weren't going to give me, people were going to give a bad reference, all that kind of stuff. So in lieu of a reference, if I could do this when it was my call and not somebody else telling me that I had to follow steps that didn't make sense, I would say to the person in the interview process, I see here that you worked at ABC Medical Company and you were, had this title. When we call your employer, what kind of things are they going to say about you? And I use that question because automatically the person is thinking, oh shit, they're going to call that employer. And I watch that person's body language. I don't even care what the answer is, because the answer is always going to be, oh, they're going to say good things about me. They're going to say, that I was a good employee. They're going to say I was always on time. They're going to say I got along with others. I'm going to get this canned answer. But what I'm looking for is the facial expression, the body language, the breathing. Those are things that are going to make a difference. So if you're going into an interview afraid that somebody's going to, that could potentially say some bad things, you may be giving that off. And I'm just letting you know, because from you talking about that may be something that's happening. I don't think it's going to be it could be something that it could be a make or break. If it's you and the other person that doesn't have that there's a potential that that's a kind of a make or break thing.
Yeah, I don't think I project that, in part because it had been suggested and I poo-pooed it, and it's just things are not working out the way that I'd prefer them to, and absent any feedback, I'm considering any possibility as something. Having said that, and you mentioned the references. I brought that up, and as one example or possibility, but there was a mutual contact of my last employer, who the woman actually who placed my boss at my last employer, and she and I spoke to each other, and she's an executive placement, executive recruiter. She didn't even realize that I had come from the same company, and then, oh, this person, yeah. And so we were having a shared conversation, and then abruptly there was a break in conversation, and that's kind of where I said, what happened all of a sudden? I was in the running for this position, and then I just kind of dropped off the face of the planet. And I was thinking about that, and maybe that's really what is happening. And I considered calling her just to touch base with her. Lo and behold, she actually called me back before I had the chance to call her, and I never even brought up the issue because I figured if she did, she would have referred, if she had that conversation with my boss and I was blackballed, she wouldn't have called me. So I put very little credence in that possibility,
Mhm.
but nothing is certain.
Sure. And my
So,
point is more not that you are getting blackballed, but that you have some type of internal thing
gotcha.
thinking that maybe you're going to, and again, just that dating analogy.
Hmm.
Let's say, you've been through an ugly divorce and your ex has been saying a bunch of crappy things to you and you believe the crappy things that they're saying, and you go on this date and, my big thing, my ex hated that I didn't finish projects. And if somebody said, hey, how, do you ever finish projects? I'd be like, it would be like do you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? So what happens sort of in that dating analogy is that you come to the interview with the baggage of the crap that your ex said about you. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
so there
Yeah.
may
No,
there
no,
may
I
be
hear what
some
you're
of that.
saying. I have a pretty good grasp of really leaving my baggages at the door, so to speak.
Okay.
And but I think to the point, I may actually be doing it and not be aware of it.
And that's, I mean, really, we don't have to like stay on that for too long. That's just something that I noticed and that I hear in some clients. So, that may be so Steve wants to know if you're feeling comfortable with us
Yeah,
tonight.
yeah.
And just
I gotta
you
say,
haven't smiled yet, so that was one of the things.
no, I
Start
just read
smiling.
that. I have to say, for someone with attention deficit, this is a little bit, one more window, and I think my head might explode.
Yeah, it is
So
a lot.
listening,
It's a lot.
talking, reading,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would fail the 911 operator
Yeah.
test where okay, your child is in the pool. Hold on a second. I need to type this down. I wouldn't do that well. So yeah, I got it.
I'm ADD too, so I totally get it. And I actually like usually don't. I do one or the other, and I do the same thing on Periscope. I either read the comments or I don't, and I go back if I'm not going to read them. So
Yeah.
so I think you also mentioned that you did not ask the recruiter, and I think that's one of the most beautiful relationships you can have is that relationship with the recruiter, because they are
Hmm.
going to get the feedback from the hiring manager and they really want you to get the job. A hiring manager's hands are tied. I hated being a hiring manager because I couldn't say to someone, actually I did all the time, and I would be like, don't tell anybody, but this is the feedback I'm going to give you, because it's there's so many blind spots when you go in, and people would undersell themselves or they would talk about things that they didn't need to, and I don't sense that you do those things, but I would use that relationship with the recruiter to just pick their brain and say, what do you think it is, and how, they want to give you that feedback. um, and it sounds like it's kind of a mixture of different things that at the end of the day that you're finding. It's not there's no common theme, it sounds like. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. I mean, I think the only common thread is that it's happening to me and it's happening.
It's real,
Beyond
right?
that,
Right.
yeah.
Give me
So
some of the reasons. I'm going to write these down because I'm going to look for a common theme. What are some of the reasons you've
mhm.
been given?
The most of them, the ones that I've made it pretty far in, have been just not a good fit.
Okay.
And I've pushed back, and I've called people, and I've even listen. I'm not asking you for a second chance. That's too much, but I really liked this job and felt I was really qualified for it, so that I don't do something and miss out on my next great opportunity. Can you give me some feedback on how I can improve? And I've yet to receive feedback from those individuals, whether it was the CEO, the CFO, or the hiring managers.
And they're not going to. I don't. I think that's you can't bark up that tree. That you won't get anywhere by asking them, because they are putting themselves at legal risk if they give you that information. So it's really, you'll not get feedback. What I would recommend, a couple of things. One is, when you get it's not a good fit, or we've decided to go with another candidate, or the thanks but no thanks email, you go back and do what your wife did, where you say, I appreciate the opportunity. I was very excited about this. However you want to word it and massage it so that it sounds really nice. But basically what you're saying is, if it doesn't work out with the other candidate, please know that I am still highly interested. I'm going to continue my job search, but keep me in mind if it doesn't work out. And throw in some statistic, like the first 90 days is when, that's most people lose their job, or, they find out that it's not a good fit in the first 90 days. So, keep me in mind. So that is very, very, very few people do that, and do that in a really respectful way. It being put on the spot as a hiring manager, and that's what happens when somebody says, why didn't I get hired? Oh, I can't tell you. I can't I can't even answer that question. Legally, I can't tell you that answer. So, I would caution you against even asking them. They're really the only person that you can ask that to is a recruiter, a third party recruiter, and they should be giving you that information. I'm going to let Misty jump in.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that I'm sorry, Misty. And I've thought about that. I'm not expecting them to break a civil rights violation or hiring act and an equal opportunity thing, but being negative, perhaps, or being overly verbose are not legally protected activities. And therefore, somebody saying something like that, maybe just work on your technique, or your answers need to be a little bit more concise. That is not violating any law.
But HR has beat it into them. Don't answer those kind of questions.
But the irony is I'm interviewing with HR people. I mean, like I asked the head of HR, what can I do to improve myself?
They just aren't. I mean, it's just and I know that's frustrating, and it's why I never liked being in that position of a hiring man. It's one of the reasons I didn't like it, but yeah, it's just not. I mean, and we can talk about it all day long, and that's not going to change. You're just not going to get good feedback from that. So, but I want to hear what Misty has to say, and then I have a couple more thoughts.
You guys, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
You can? Okay. So one of the things I was wondering, Glenn, is, when you're interviewing, do you I notice when I'm interviewing when I lose them. Do you notice when you're losing them what topic matter was?
I'm sorry. I'm a little bit more aware of that type of thing, but it's not as. I don't see it as much. I worked with a coach a lot. She talked about the power of silence, power of three, and so I've worked on trying to condense my answers and work a lot more concise so that doesn't happen. But maybe I'm so focused at times on answering the question or whatnot, that I'm overlooking some things, and there I can juggle 3 balls but not 4, and so but that is a possibility that I'm not aware of it. So
Well, I mean, I'm not saying you're not aware. I think you probably do have an idea. And just I notice that when I'm on the lookout as to when I lose them, that's when I usually have I try and grasp their attention. I might say, well, do you need me to clarify about how I develop those projects? Because I can see I can like catch it almost right away when I see that, I may have lost their attention. But one thing I was thinking about too as well was I want you to be just kind of aware of the stats, just generally, basically. So for every 10,000 that we made could be a month in which we may find employment. So if I made 50,000, it'd be about 5 months. So that's one thing to look at. And sales and marketing, for every 10 interviews, we would get 1 job offer.
mm-hmm.
And so those are just some rough stats. And so I really don't feel you're too far off the stats, really. I was wondering, do you ask for the job?
Directly, no. My closing has been more of, is there any reason why you don't think I would be a good fit for the role? I within the past 24 hours, I've given a lot of thought to maybe my lack of closing is killing me, and it's not anything other than me just being unremarkable, or to put it another way, my resume is so good, and my interviewing is average, that I don't live up to the hype that I self-proclaim myself to be. I'm having a difficult time explaining that, but I'm this wall that we're going to build is phenomenal. It's beautiful. It's going to be 20 feet tall, and we're not going to pay for this wall. Somebody else is going to pay for this wall. And then, we start building. We're like, it's a brick wall. I mean, I'm using that as an example, but that is quite possibly, this resume where people like Kat said, 50% hit rate or return rate is, I acknowledge it's pretty darn good. And I want to meet this guy. I don't have a position, but I want to meet this guy. And I get in front of them, and I'm not hitting boom. I'm not sealing the deal. So yeah, maybe I mean, are you suggesting that you just come right out and say, okay, what do I need to do to get this job?
I suggest that people, whatever your personality is, go with. I want to be honest that there's 2 schools of thought about asking for the job, and that you should not. Some people say you should not ask for the job, if that is too aggressive. I think it's all in how you say it. And so personally myself, I'm subtle. I'll tend to say things like, based on our discussion today, I really feel that my skills, and I'm making stuff up here, communications, public relations, and marketing would be an excellent fit for this job. And I would just love the opportunity to work with you. Now, the thing about that is that you see the body language. Would you not be kind of convinced? There's some energy in that. You know what I'm saying? I got some energy behind it. But also too, the thing is some people are direct. They just are like, hey, so would you like me to report on Monday at 8? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that either. There really isn't. some people will say things like, on the first 30 days of the job, what's the biggest accomplishment you see me making, which is actually exceedingly powerful. And so, however, and some people just say, hey, I'd like to work here.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think however it makes sense for you. And I know this may sound really weird, Glenn, but when it, if you can be in front of a mirror and looking yourself right in the eye and ask for the job, as well as say your personal commercial. You know what I'm talking about when I say personal commercial? So I need you to look yourself right dead in the face when you say these things. And I really believe those could be some key things. And you're sending a thank you letters and all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, thank you letters, and as well as thank you emails if I have the email. But yeah, and Steven's given me some feedback on my thank you letters. I just happen to have quite a number of them before I make the change. But yeah, I'm doing everything, and I am constantly, my wife and I are constantly asking each other the same question: how is it that all of this, and it's seemingly destined to be unemployed for life? And
no, you want
in reality, I know that that's not
right,
the case.
But it feels like it.
But your reality tends to be what you is most immediate, and if you're constantly getting a door slammed in your face, you continue to push on, but it starts wearing you down, and you're like, all I need is one victory, all I need is one, this one's going to be it, I got it, and somehow I snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, or that's what it seems like. And you know, all the positive talk that you could possibly give yourself is done there, but we don't get that feedback, and I don't know what is going wrong, what is happening, and it's why, you know, I probably am doing a number of things that I could improve upon, but I don't think I'm doing something or have anything in my overall profile, if you will, that would make somebody run from me. You know, I don't have a criminal conviction, and I find amazing that there are people with criminal convictions who find their way back into the very same job they got convicted of. And here I am without having that. So, you know, it's there are, maybe it isn't what I'm doing, one single thing. Maybe it's I'm reading people and I'm reading them incorrectly, and you know, they're leaning forward because I'm not talking loud enough, and I'm thinking they're interested in me, as an example. I don't know what it is.
Well, a couple of things. One, I want to say, when sort of what you were talking about when you were working with a coach, and they said they were talking about the power of silence and the power of three and those types of things. I highly recommend that. A lot of times, as a hiring manager or a recruiter, I don't love this technique because it makes me uncomfortable too, but just to be quiet, and then the person just starts rambling with information, and they always, you know, they tell. I always said I was the Barbara Walters of interviewing, of job interviewing, because I had people in my office, you know, coming for a job, and they'd be crying because they're telling me their whole life story. But so the one thing, when people tend to do that, the advice that I give them, and it's sort of along the lines of what Misty said, is to, you know, answer that question very concisely, and then say, this is to stop yourself. This isn't really for them. This is more for you. Did that answer
Mhm.
your question? And then you pause, and that way that's sort of forcing them to get in, to engage. And I like
Yeah.
what Misty was saying, like pay attention to their body language, so that if you do see that you're starting to lose them, that you can sort of just stop yourself and say, did that answer your question? Because I had a client that was very much that way, and he loved that, and he said that technique worked really, really well for him. And then for asking for the job, the same type of thing. I was thinking what Missy was saying was to make it, comfortable for you. If it's a salesperson, you better get in there and ask for that job. You better get in there and say, I'm ready to start on, when do I start? I'm wearing this. I'll be here. You know what I mean? Like, you're really closing the deal. I don't know that I expect somebody in, comp and benefits to seal the deal in that way, but to say, I'm highly interested, what do we need to do to make this happen? I think those would be, those are two things that I'm gathering from this. But I have to tell you, I honestly, I think you're in your head too much. I'm just going to be really, this is what I do. I get really candid, and I think you have not just an awesome resume. You can't have an awesome resume without having an awesome background. You can't. So I think what you need to do, this is my advice, is before you go in, just look over your resume, but get to those feelings of when you were feeling very accomplished. What I recommend people do is look at 3 peak moments in your life that you felt very, very accomplished. For me, it was when I was working as an HR manager. I was for the startup, but it was a startup that was growing very, very quickly. So I was developing policies and procedures. I was working on the corporate culture. I had my hands in everything, and I felt so like just, I could do anything. And when I can harness the energy of how I felt then to how I felt after I lost 3 jobs in 3 years, that's a very different cat that you're going to get. When you get the cat that was an HR manager who just made shit happen when I wanted to make it happen, to the cat who got fired for, you know what I mean? Like, got downsized, got pretty much downsized, and then pretty much got fired. Like, those were like that. I was so defeated that I that's when I went into business for myself. But it was because I don't know what I would have done in an interview. I mean, I think I would have been the one crying. So I think getting out of your own head, but in your head in a different way. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, kind of that anchor, and I've got it. And yeah, I think that that would be my advice, is to really feel those feelings and emotions of when you have accomplished those things. Misty's got something, I think.
I do. And hey, Glenn, did you see all the hand motions that Kat was using
Oh.
when she was talking?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want to teach you something. And I coach people on this when they interview, and that is the mirroring technique.
Right.
So
Yes.
psychologists, when I went to school for graduate school in psychology, psychologists actually mirror you. Do the same thing in the interview. Subtle art. So like,
yeah,
going like this, right? So when I answered, because I didn't realize I do it, but when I answer, I would do the same thing. I say, I think I hear what you're saying, and I feel that I'm actually mirroring her. And what that does is that really helps you develop a rapport with the interviewer very, very quickly, because they will, when you leave, they'll just go, I like that person. I really like it. And it's because you mirrored them. And it doesn't have to be everything they do. It's a real subtle art.
Yeah,
but
mirror, not mimic.
Really powerful.
Yeah. I've heard of that. I'm somewhat familiar with it. I know that if it's done too much, then it's intimidating.
It's a subtle art.
It could be off-putting. I have a colleague who mentioned something about word choice, and that is something that I don't quite understand. But he was using, rather than saying, when I worked there, he used, like, when they hired me. So you're putting an action into the conversation, and he has not had any problem finding work. It's a very similar profession as me, but and it's kind of an intriguing concept, but I don't think I understand it enough to be able to really be able to do it effectively.
And
So
I guess for me, I would caution against doing too much that goes against um your comfort level, because I'm the same way. Like I have a friend who, he's all about the word. So I know what you're talking about. Like he doesn't say, I'm trying to remember even what they were, and to be honest, it started to get on my nerves because I'm like, I can't even, like, I don't know what you're talking about. I just say what I say. But I do believe that there's power in words. I think you do. I like that. I think that there is a lot of validity to that. But I think when you are initially trying to get out of your own head in a negative way, and I don't think that you're a negative person. I'm not saying that, but you've just experienced several things that sort of make you go, you know, kind of what the heck's wrong with me? And that's, I mean, that's what I went through, and I think it is good to reflect, but don't reflect so much that that's what you're focusing on. Go back to those really powerful times in your life when you felt good, when you had those peak performances that allowed you to put that amazing stuff on your resume. You can't have a good resume if you didn't have a good, work experience.
no, that's a really really good point, because I do try to psych myself up, but it's perhaps I'm not coalescing my thoughts into a simple enough mantra, if you will, and I'm trying to remember all 50,000 things I've done so I can answer any particular conversation, and yeah, I honestly, I don't think I'm projecting any kind of negative
Mm-mm.
in the interview, um, because in particular when I do share my challenges, I over emote, like tonight, and so it's cathartic in that sense that I, okay, it's a new day, a new opportunity, and whatnot. One question I have is, as I look back or reflect on my role in my last employer, I remember looking upon myself as, if this job doesn't work out, I've got 15 waiting, and I have no problem. These people need me more than I need them. Whereas when I look at how I was interacting with them after I was hired, I was much more, I need to please them. Otherwise, I'm out of work. And they worked me like a dog, we'll say that. So I felt very much subservient, and I was willingly handing over my leash to them, whereas I was holding on to my leash in the interview process. And as I look at the latest interview processes, I almost feel I'm not as in control of that situation. And I think that's part of it, has been the desperation has settled in, where, I this isn't the ideal job for me, but I don't have the luxury or the opportunity for the ideal job anymore. I need a steady source of income. And then once I'm back on my feet, then I can start looking for that. So there's perhaps there is a little bit more of that desperation showing and coming across than I'm even aware of.
And I don't know if I would, I mean, I'm not sensing negativity. I'm not sensing desperation, but if they do, you know, the mindset of a hiring manager would be, you know, if he's taking this job just as a stopgap, then he's not going to stay here long term. So, you know, that's if there's a way that you can, you know, address that, or, you know, even it might be not that it's a stopgap in that I'm going to use this position to you know, just to take whatever. Maybe I'm going to take this position and I'm going to grow it into, because you know you can do that. I mean, those, when you talk about what you do, and I wish we could have gotten into a little bit more of that. And I think Steve asked something about, you know, you possibly coming back, and I would love to do like maybe even a mock interview with you. But when you were talking about what you do, there was a little bit of a different energy, and it was I think you probably get very excited about what you do, and I think from a company standpoint, there's so much value and so much room to grow in a way that, you know, helps the company, you know, with retention. There's so many different areas that when you're rewarding employees, the company benefits from that, you know, across the board. So maybe that's even a different mindset of I take this position, but then I'm going to grow it into what I need it to be, because they're going to want me to do that because I'm that good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you believe
Yeah.
that? Did you believe that? Because I feel like you didn't believe that when I just said
I do think I think that this is wearing on me, and it might
Yeah.
not be, you know, this is the same suit that I'm wearing every day, and I've had to remind myself that even though I've said my 30-second commercial 1,000 times, it's the first time that that person is hearing it, and it needs to be just as good for them as it was for the first person I shared it with. And you know, I living in Florida, you go to Disney a lot. I'm sorry, what? Okay. Okay. The Disney experience that you try and, you know, you go, It's a Small World has been around for longer than, you know, most of us have been alive, and the people that drive those machines and are just as wonderful as the ride makes you feel today as they did the very first day it was used in the World's Fair. And that's not an easy thing to do, particularly when you're putting so much at stake on a regular basis, and really getting nothing that I'm seeing feedback wise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We can hear you.
I may lose charge here in a few moments, so I just wanted
Okay.
to say a couple of things before my computer just sound goes out. But I think we do need to acknowledge what ASU alum said, and this is an important thing. And in that can come across, I don't know, but just something to look at possibly. But one thing I was thinking about, Glenn, is I wasn't sure if you are aware of what they call the 30, 60, 90-day plan. The 30, 60, 90-day plan is a really good strategy. Just depends if it's a company you're really shooting for. And then also too, I was wondering if you've heard of employment plans. An employment plan is basically going over the whole mountain and basically doing mega research on different companies and developing your own job. And so I just wanted to, and please know, Glenn, I don't feel you're doing anything wrong. I don't
Neither.
feel that, and I really, I know it's very difficult, but I really, really want to encourage you in self-care. And I know as a guy, it may seem weird, but I really want you to do good things for yourself and really know that, and really know that you know that you know that you are the absolute best person in the world that, and for that job. And so this is just, but Ayala von Sant wrote a book and it's called In the Meantime. This is, and I'm sure in the whole history of your work history, this is just but a stopgap.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to look at the
Yeah.
whole bigger picture. This is just a stopgap. Yes, it may be a period of time that's a trying time, but it's just going to be in the meantime. And so, and Glenn, you are putting on your resumes and everything your contract work, right? So it's not really 20.
Yes.
So it wouldn't really be 20 months, right? Or it's still.
Well, I have the consulting contract work, and I don't go into details that, the last opportunity I was doing was 3 months and there was 2 months of inactivity. They don't ask and I'm not going to share.
Right.
But I would easily drop the role. When they ask me what's your earliest availability, I say, well, you're in luck because I'm in between contracts right now,
Smart.
waiting for a bid to come back. So now's an ideal time. And so for 90% of the time, I'm not lying. But once in a while, I am actually, struggling to figure out how I would do that. But you know what? Hey, I do. I'll make things happen. That's a good problem. Misty, I studied psychology as well, and I could never understand the concept of eustress, which is supposedly positive stress. But I'd love some of that right now. What do I do with all this millions of dollars I won with my lottery ticket? Good problems to have. That certainly would beat out, wondering how you're going to pay for
So
food and
Kat,
whatnot.
I don't know. I probably am like I don't know how much charge I am, but I'm at like nine. I have 7 minutes remaining. It's telling me. And so
Okay.
you may want to, I'm going to let you guys proceed, but you may want to schedule a time where we actually part two, if Glenn
Yeah, I would
doesn't
love to.
mind, or
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
Stephen actually has suggested, and he said that Glenn's family may need him too as well right now. So we
Bedtime.
may want to schedule that as well.
Yeah. No, it's funny. You said the 30, 60, 90 day. I was at I just read about that or saw somebody who had tremendous success with it just this afternoon. And that's kind of where I was alluding to. Maybe I'm not closing the deal properly. And this really seemed like it was certainly, if it wasn't coming right out and saying, hey, I want this job, it's saying, you'd be a fool not to bring me on board. Because and it really challenged my own personal notion. I mean, I've had the questions where people are like, what would you, what would you do 30, 60, 90 days in here? And I've been very open and forthcoming and say, look, this company existed before I was here, and you guys have been here for a long time. I'm under no illusion that I'm going to be making great changes. So I can do a lot of good things, and it really looks to management and supervision figure out how I can best add value. This is a different. Okay. This is a different. okay, this is a different approach, and as I looked at it, it certainly was concise enough to give that I know how to manage the priorities, but vague enough to say to leave out what those actual priorities are. And so I haven't even. It's wonderful timing that you bring that in, because it
No
just
question.
further validates the value of that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Well, I think maybe if you're up for it, I would love round two. I'm going to look this up too. I don't know about the 30, 60, 90-day employment plan. Is that what this is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really takes you through what you're going to do on 30 days in the job, what you're going to do 60 days, and what you're going to do in 90
Okay.
days. And you
Okay.
leave it with the employer. And I go to careerdfw.org, but I think I'm trying to look at what the website is, careerusa.org. I was trying to find the exact article. So careerusa.org, it's in their resources. So I was trying to find that exactly for you guys. I might have to find it and get it to you guys later. But careerusa.org, it's within their resources that they have.
Awesome.
They actually have samples that it's so easy. They have templates. You just basically create a personalized one just for that job in that company.
Like that. I
Mhm.
like that a lot. That would definitely
Yeah.
help a lot of different things. Well, let's
Yeah.
do this. Do you want to follow up? And do this next week, and do maybe like an actual mock interview.
That would be fine. I would love that.
Would be good.
Yeah, I would love to do something like that. Just so, just something kind of quick. But I think that I think you're a little more amazing than what you give yourself credit for. I'm just saying.
Thank you.
I do. I really do. I mean, and Coach Misty can tell you, when your information came across to us, we all looked at it ahead of time, and we all were like, this is really impressive. So, and
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah. So I think I want to leave you with that. I want to leave you with, I think you are much more awesome. You know that you are, and now we just have to make sure that you know that, so that when you go for your next interview, you
Yes.
project that as well. But you're pretty darn cool in a lot of
Thank
ways,
you.
I can tell.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Here's the information for the 30, 60, 90-day plan. I think it's on there. Do you see it?
Um,
How does that come through?
Oh, there it is,
is.
yeah.
Okay, there it came through
Oh, okay.
on mine.
That's really cool.
Awesome. See, Misty's so full of information. Love it. I love it.
Yeah, the one thing when I saw the presentation that the person who had landed, I kind of wrote down in a abridged format that 30, 60, 90, 30 days you learn, 60 days you understand, and 90 days you should be doing something. And you break it down. What am I learning in the first 30 days? What am I understanding and learning in 60 days? And what should I be doing? And what kind of results should you expect 90 days out? And it really was I'll put it this way: the guy that was doing the presentation, nodding heads, and he puts this up on the screen, and everybody, and there were 50 people in the room, and everybody's like, "Oh my goodness, that's awesome!" So, yeah, he definitely ended on a high note. So, yeah. But I definitely appreciate everyone's insight and thoughts and encouragement, and really, really thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on. This was good stuff.
Yes. So I will circle back with Steve. I'm not sure if he's still on. I think he said good night, but I will circle back with him, and we'll start, I guess, for next week.
Sounds great.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, ladies. Have a great evening.
You too. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.